Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, UN Security Council discusses the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Israeli and Palestinian foreign ministers address the meeting. Macron holds talks with Israeli leaders, says terrorism is a common enemy, to meet Palestinian and Arab leaders. Biden says no ceasefire in Gaza until the Hamas releases all hostages. One of two Israeli women freed from captivity shares her experience. China sacks Defense Minister Li Shangfu, strips Li and ousted Foreign Minister Qin Gang of the title of State Councillor. Russia's Foreign Minister calls on Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in Tehran, pushes for stronger bilateral ties. And India and its diaspora celebrate the festival of Dussehra, also known as Vijayadashmi. First up, the latest on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The UN Security Council held an open debate on the situation in West Asia on Tuesday. Several foreign ministers, including Palestinian and Israeli ministers, addressed the meeting. While addressing the meeting, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed concern over the war further escalating in West Asia. He said the UN food supplies in Gaza will run out in a few days.
No party to an armed conflict is above international humanitarian law. Excellencies, thankfully some humanitarian relief is finally getting into Gaza, but it is a drop of aid in an ocean of need. In addition, our UN fuel supplies in Gaza will run out in a matter of days, and that would be another disaster. Without fuel, aid cannot be delivered, hospitals will not have power, and drinking water cannot be purified or even pumped.
The Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki said that more than 5,000 Palestinian lives have been lost in the Israeli attacks, and almost all victims are civilians.
Over 2 million Palestinians are on a survival mission every day, every night. By the time representatives are done delivering their speeches today, 150 Palestinians will have been killed, including 60 children. In the last 2 weeks, over 5,700 Palestinians have been killed, including over 2,300 children and 1,300 women. Compared to the population of Gaza, that is the equivalent of 145,000 British citizens or 700,000 US citizens. Almost all those killed by Israel are civilians. Over 1 million displaced, 170,000 housing units destroyed.
Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen said that 7th October was a wake-up call for the entire free world when the Hamas attacked the Israelis.
As we meet here today, young babies, children are held in Gaza. This is beyond imagination. Saturday, October 7, will go down in history as nothing less than a brutal massacre. Saturday, October 7, is a wake-up call for the entire free world, a wake-up call against extremism and terror.
On a solidarity visit to Israel, French President Emmanuel Macron proposed widening of the international coalition fighting against the Islamic State to include the fight against the Hamas in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed to destroy the Hamas and called it a battle of civilization. Meanwhile, Israel intensified its bombing in the Gaza Strip. Raghav Kumar Jha reports.
As the conflict between Israel and Gaza enters the 18th day, Israel has intensified its bombing campaign in the besieged Gaza Strip. Hamas says 140 Palestinians have been killed in new Israeli airstrikes in northern Gaza's Al-Shati refugee camp, as well as in southern cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis. However, residents of Gaza are not ready to give up.
This is our land and our great-grandparents' land. We will not give up on it, even if our blood runs dry. We will not leave. They want us to be deported. We will not leave. We are staying in our land, in our country, in our homeland.
Israel is preparing for a multilateral operation on the militant group Hamas in Gaza from the air, ground and sea. Israel's military said that it is ready and determined for the next stage in the war and is awaiting political instructions.
Our fighters, the IDF fighter, are ready and determined in the field. They continue training for the day the order is given. We have long weeks of fighting ahead of us. We will act on the most suitable operational timing and according to political instructions.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron, who is on a solidarity visit to Israel, proposed on Tuesday that an international coalition fighting against Islamic State in Iraq and Syria be widened to include the fight against Palestinian militant group Hamas in Gaza.
This is why France is prepared for the international coalition against Islamic State, within which we are engaged for our operation in Iraq and Syria, to also be able to fight against Hamas. I proposed to our international partners, I discussed that we can build a regional and international coalition to fight against the terrorist group that threaten us all.
Speaking alongside French President Macron in Jerusalem, Israeli PM Netanyahu vowed to destroy Hamas, calling his country's fight against it a test for the West and for civilization.
The test for the West and for civilization is Hamas. If Hamas emerges victorious, we will all lose. Europe will be endangered. Everyone will be endangered. Civilization will be endangered. So if Hamas wins, if Hamas loses and is defeated, then the forces of civilization win. That is why this battle is not merely our own. It's Europe's battle, it's America's battle, it's civilization's battle. It's the battle for the heart and soul and the future of the Middle East and the Arab world.
On the other hand, Qatar's ruling Emir has urged the international community not to grant Israel unrestricted authorization to kill Palestinians in its fight against Hamas, in what he called dangerous escalation that threatens global security. Raghav Kumar Jha, reporting for DD India.
And Mia Alberti joins us from Beirut in Lebanon. Mia, the Hamas has released 2 more hostages, taking the number of hostages released so far to 4. But what's the word on the 200-odd Israeli and foreign nationals still held captive by the Hamas?
Well, as you mentioned, they're still captive. We don't know much about them, except for what we heard from these latest hostages that were freed on Monday. We heard that they said that they were treated respectfully by Hamas, that they were fed once a day, that they had access to a doctor and to hygiene products. And so we do know that according to these hostages, if this is something to go by, to know the situation of the other 200 hostages, is that they are apparently safe. We did heard from these hostages that were freed that they were bombed by Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, that they heard the bombs. And so, of course, anyone in Gaza right now, and that includes civilians, Palestinians, and the hostages as well, are at risk of being killed by one of the Israeli airstrike, as we're seeing an intensification of these strikes in that Gaza Strip that includes hostages at risk now. But no side, I mean, for Hamas, it is absolutely important to keep these hostages. They are the biggest negotiation, the biggest chip that they have in negotiation with Israel, indirectly or directly, in terms of this conflict. We do know that an Israeli life, or even a foreigner, it is very valuable. The last time that there was an exchange of hostages and prisoners between Hamas and Israel, we're talking about one Israeli officer, if I'm not wrong, was exchanged by thousands of Palestinians. So you can see the value that this will have for Hamas, and so we can see that the group is keen on trying to keep them, although we have heard from Hamas that they, or actually from Israel, that they would seize all strikes in Gaza if Hamas decides to release all of those hostages. But like I mentioned, these are of incredible value for Hamas, and so we don't know much about them except that they're still in danger while they are inside of Gaza.
And Mia, what's been the outcome of Macron's visit?
Well, about French President Emmanuel Macron's visit, we don't know the total outcome right now. We heard a few minutes ago what he said while meeting the Israeli authorities, saying that France is open to reviving, let's say this, or to reapply this US-led coalition against the Islamic State that has been operating for many years in Iraq and Syria, and to divert those attentions to fight Hamas positions, inside of Gaza, but also other type of positions in other countries as well. But we only know half of his visit now. He is, as we speak, meeting with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. So we will see what he has to say after meeting with the Palestinians and what their concerns are and how France might help them. But we also know that that visit will not end now. French President Emmanuel Macron is also expected to go to Amman in Jordan to meet with other regional leaders. Of course, this is a situation that involves not only Hamas, Israel, and the Palestinian Authority. It is something that is involving all of the region, with some rumors here in Lebanon that Emmanuel Macron could come and visit Lebanon. Of course, France and Lebanon have historical ties, and we did see the French ambassador here in Lebanon meeting with the Iranian ambassador last week, and so we have that, we can see those channels of communication, indirect channels between Europe and the Western states with Iran and Hezbollah representing this axis of resistance here against Israel. So we will have to see at the end, after meeting with the Israelis, after meeting with the Palestinians, if France has made any type of progress where others have failed to achieve some sort of pathway towards peace.
Mia, thank you. Mia Alberti reporting there from Beirut in Lebanon. And still to come on DD India News Hour. A former Indian ambassador to the Palestinian Authority talks about life in Gaza. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov calls on Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in Tehran. And Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal addresses a conference in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Going back to the top story, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Mr. T.S. Tirumurthy joins us from Chennai. Mr. Tirumurthy is a former Indian permanent representative to the United Nations in New York and former Indian High Commissioner to Malaysia. Ambassador Tirumurthy has served in Cairo, Egypt. He has a distinction of being the first representative of India to the Palestinian Authority in Gaza from 1996 to 1998. Ambassador Tirumurthy, welcome to DD India News Hour. Now, you spent 2 years in Gaza. What is life like in Gaza, and what are the implications of a potential Israeli incursion or ground assault on Gaza?
No, thank you once again for having me in your program, Ramesh. After the terror attack, Israel is very clear that they want to dismantle the Hamas infrastructure, and they have to go into Gaza for that. And that has been part of their calculation. And the second is, of course, freeing the Israeli hostages. But even before we talk about ground assault, I think Israel's aerial bombing has already killed more than 5,000 civilians in Gaza. And if you actually look at Ukraine, in 20 months, more than 9,500 civilians have been killed. But it's not even 20 days. And you have 5,000 lives, Palestinian lives lost in Gaza. So there is a human disaster which is unfolding. And in addition to that, they have already suffered collective blockade. There has been a gradual dehumanization of the Palestinians taking place by equating them with Hamas and other things. And there has been mass displacement. So when you talk about a ground operation, I think it's going to be more of the same. A lot of things are already happening, and it's going to be more of the same. I was just struck by what the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, had mentioned to Mr. Fareed Zakaria just a couple of days ago. And he mentioned there are some constraints in the Gaza operation. The first one he mentioned, of course, which you know are hostages. The second is he mentioned about potential violations of international law, which needs to be kept in mind. The third he mentioned is about erosion of international support once the civilian casualties mount. The fourth, he talked about this spreading to the region. And I think he mentioned about Hezbollah in that context. And finally, he said, if everything going, maybe for several months, but then finally, whom are you going to pass this on to after you go into Gaza and you cleanse it potentially? So I think these are the questions he asked.
Right.
And one more question I would like to add to this is that if you're really going to cleanse Gaza and you sort of depopulate Gaza, and then in which case you're going to make the two-state solution practically impossible. And that will make the Israeli security, or rather it will make the Israel more insecure and not less insecure. So this is something we need to keep in mind.
Help our viewers understand another thing, Ambassador. Why is Israel targeting the West Bank? Now, nearly 100 Palestinians have been killed in the Israeli raids in the West Bank. Now, there's no Hamas in the West Bank, but Israel still carries out raids there. A mosque in Jenin was attacked a few days ago. What does that tell you about the scope of Israel's military actions?
See, even before 7th of October, we should remember that 250 Palestinian civilians have been killed in the West Bank. And as you say, there is no Hamas in West Bank. So even before this, they have had 250 Palestinian civilians. So the thing is, I think it is very clear that there is an ultra-nationalist Israeli government, and they don't believe in a two-state solution. I'm not saying it. They have said it. And they see the expansion of settlements as a very important way. They're giving full support to it as a very important way of undermining the two-state solution. So if instead of the 242 and 338 asking for withdrawing from land, what they are doing is they're actually going ahead and annexing land in the West Bank. And that is why you're seeing all these killings take place. And and they want to make the two-state solution impossible. So they are creating facts on the ground. And so therefore, doing all this and expecting nothing will happen, in my opinion, is a little bit short-sighted.
Now, the Cairo Summit for Peace, Ambassador, failed to deliver a joint statement. What does that tell you about the so-called Arab unity or the lack thereof?
Let me be very frank, Ramesh. See, if Arabs had been really united over the years, we would have had a Palestinian state by now. So they have always been disunited, and outside powers have been very keen to make sure that they stay disunited. So I think, for example, you had the Camp David Accord, you have Egypt and, there are approximately Egypt and Israel, and they had a self-rule provision. The Oslo, it talked about self-rule for the Palestinians, and nothing has happened. And now you have the normalization, the Abraham Accords with UAE and others, then your Saudi was moving towards it. And once again, they have some sort of a footnote about the Palestinian cause. But the problem is, all this has resulted in the Palestinian cause becoming a footnote of history, not just footnote of agreements. So I think that is the real danger you have. So now why are these, the Arab world coming together? Because they have been pushed. They have been pushed down. Now they are reacting to it. And you've seen what is happening on the streets. So therefore, they feel that there should be something which they need to do. So true Arab unity on this, I think they will come only when they realize that Palestinian issue is important for their own security and for their own prosperity, not just for them, but also for Israel.
Now, so far, Iran has not obliged Israel by directly getting involved in the conflict. What do you make of Tehran's calculus, Ambassador?
That's a very important question, Ramesh. So actually, I think a good indicator of where Iran stands is really where Hezbollah is standing right now. They have not substantially enhanced their rockets and others, and they have done their initial firing, and they are keeping the temperature a little bit up, but not substantially. And that probably indicates where Iran is standing. I think Iran itself is facing fairly, strong sanctions, especially after JCPOA and various other things. They are facing pushbacks. And that's why they had this rapprochement also with Saudi Arabia, as you know, in Yemen. And not just Iran, but many Arab countries are now being forced into taking a stronger stand because of what is happening on their streets. So my feeling is that so far they want to contain it, not just Iran, but the entire Arab world. But if the ground offensive and the prolongation of the war, and of course the exponential increase in civilian casualties, even now it is unacceptably high. And if it goes even more, I don't know what is really acceptable and unacceptable here. But then it will be a different ballgame altogether.
And finally, Ambassador Tirumurthy, the US and its allies have issued a joint statement recently that speaks about a durable peace. So is a two-state solution back in play?
Ramesh, I look at it this way, that I think the two-state solution never really went out of play. And it was really the only solution available. Now, people talk about one-state solution. I don't even know what it means. I think it's a no-state solution or a no-state non-solution. So, and even let's remember one thing, even the Hamas, when they amended their charter about 6 years ago, and they even mentioned there, that temporarily and all that, they may even accept 1967 borders. Mm-hmm. They even talked about Hudna, which is a temporary ceasefire, and they took out some anti-Semitic remarks. So I think everyone is looking at a two-state solution. The question which we need to ask ourselves is, what are they doing about it? This is something where you need to go beyond some sort of a lip service. And when you see that on the ground, the reality is different. And, they're eating up the ground through settlements and other things. And this is, making a two-state solution practically impossible. So I think everyone is making the right noises about two-state solution, including now. But after they contain this one way or the other, and if it's contained, and if they go back to business as usual, then it's back to square one. So I think we have to break the cycle of violence between an agreement, then non-implementation of the ground, which will result in violence, and it goes back to another set of agreements. Of course, history, about the Camp David and how that broke down, and then we had the Intifada, and after Intifada were the Oslo Accords, that broke down. So I think this cycle, history teaches us this goes on. And at some point of time, they need to stop it on the ground. No point in talking about a two-state solution, but eroding it on the ground.
Ambassador Tirumurthy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Right, moving on. Russia and Iran held bilateral talks in Tehran on strengthening their relationship amid ongoing conflict in West Asia. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also took part in a 3+3 meeting with his counterparts from Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Lavrov commented on the U.S. role in Gaza, saying that unilateral moves do not help the region.
Amidst the global concern expressed over Gaza, a significant diplomatic meeting between foreign ministers of Iran, Russia, Turkey, Azerbaijan and Armenia held in Tehran has drawn the world's attention. The participation of the Russian foreign minister in the 3+3 meeting is significant, where he commented on the ongoing Gaza situation and said that the unilateral moves to resolve the conflict in the Middle East can only worsen the situation.
The United States is already at the forefront of those already intervening. This includes sending 2 aircraft carriers groups and several thousand combat soldiers. As I understand it, with all the necessary weapons, including heavy weapons, to the conflict zone. And the more such proactive steps there are on the part of, by and large, any state, the higher the risk, the higher the danger that the conflict will escalate.
Lavrov once again mentioned the two-states theory for the Gaza solution.
The entire international community, and this still remains a fact, has confirmed and continues to confirm its commitment to the principle of two states, the so-called two-state solution to the problem. When two states, Palestine and Israel, two full-fledged sovereign states, will live side by side in good neighborliness, peace and security.
The foreign ministers' meeting in Tehran was held to address the issues of the South Caucasus region, peace talks between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and the need to expand regional cooperation. Russia is also annoyed by the involvement of the United States and European Union in the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process and seeks to regain its influence, which was weakened in the conflict with Ukraine.
India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal on Tuesday took part in the plenary of the 7th Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. While sharing the details on X, Minister Goyal said that he discussed about new pathways for investment with the goal of creating a positive global impact and navigating new frontiers of growth and prosperity. Minister Goyal also met with World Bank President Ajay Banga on the sidelines of the conference. The Indian minister also met with the founder of Bridgewater Associates, Ray Dalio. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman also attended the annual Future Investment Initiative Summit held in Riyadh on Tuesday. The annual event is typically used by attendees as an opportunity to build relationships with some of Saudi Arabia's biggest companies. And still to come on DD India Newshour. Xi Jinping removes his Defense Minister Li Shangfu in the country's second leadership shakeup in 3 months. Russia claims to have destroyed 3 Ukrainian boats off the Crimean Peninsula. And police personnel among 22 killed in a spate of violence in Mexico.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. UN Security Council discusses the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Israeli and Palestinian foreign ministers address the meeting. Macron holds talks with Israeli leaders, says terrorism is a common enemy, to meet Palestinian and Arab leaders. And China sacks Defense Minister Li Shangfu, strips Li and ousted Foreign Minister Qin Gang of the title of State Councillor. China has removed its defense minister, raising questions about the stability of the leadership team around Chinese President Xi Jinping. General Li Shangfu was absent from public view for 2 months and was dismissed as defense minister and state councillor. Now, this may be a matter of concern for China as it prepares to host foreign and defense officials at the Beijing Shangshan Forum from the 29th to the 31st of this month. This is the second ousting of a senior leader in 3 months. Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit the U.S. from 26 to 28 October at the invitation of U.S. Foreign Minister Antony Blinken. Wang's trip to Washington, D.C. is seen as paving the way for a potential meeting between President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC summit in the western U.S. city of San Francisco next month.
We hope that the US side will work with China to deliver on the important common understandings reached between the two heads of the state, including to strengthen communication and dialogue, expand practical cooperation, properly manage differences, and jointly bring the China-US relations back to track of sound and stable growth.
And Caroline Malone joins us from Washington, D.C. for more on this developing story. Caroline, what can you tell us about Wang Yi's visit to the U.S.?
Well, absolutely. It looks like he is going to be coming to the US later this week from Thursday. And really important that we have the Foreign Minister of China visiting at a time in which both the US and China are really trying to improve their relations. You know, these, of course, are two of the world's powers, and they have had a difficult relations, you could say, in the last few years. And there's lots to talk about. From the US perspective, the White House saying that they're going to be discussing not just bilateral, but regional and global issues as well. In recent years, there's been a fallout with US and China over trade issues, particularly semiconductors are contentious between the two. We've also got what's been happening in Ukraine with concern from the US side that China might try and supply arms to Russia. We've also got the South China Sea and potential flare-up over Taiwan. But of course, most recently, we've got the major issues with Israel and Hamas and that conflict happening there. The US very keen to make sure that regional players don't get involved. And that could be something, according to analysts, that China helps with as well, because they do exert some influence in that region. So really an important time for Foreign Minister Wang to be visiting the United States.
Caroline, so do we take it then that Xi Jinping will indeed travel to the US next month for the APEC summit? And would he be meeting with Biden?
It is looking likely, although at the moment we haven't had that confirmed by Beijing. But it would be likely that he would visit during that time because, of course, it's the Asia-Pacific Economic Council leaders meeting. So we're going to be seeing the leaders of the Asia-Pacific, including, of course, President Biden, visiting to discuss economic issues between the region in San Francisco. Now, you know, among the issues that could be discussed are those trade issues and the fallout over particularly semiconductors and others, which are incredibly important to both US and China. They do have a good amount of trade between the two countries. So it's something that they could potentially have progress on and agree on, despite the fact that they do see other global issues differently, you know, at the moment. And it's possible that this could happen because there's been a lead-up of different US officials, both visiting Beijing and also, as we know now, Wang coming to the United States. So it is looking like there are higher and higher level meetings happening between the US and China. And if it does go ahead and we do see a sideline meeting between President Biden and President Xi, it'll be the first time that they've met face-to-face in over a year since they met on the sidelines of G20 in Indonesia.
Caroline, thank you. Now, nearly 3 weeks after the former U.S. House of Representatives Speaker's ouster, the U.S. still remains deadlocked and without any ability to pass laws. House Republicans heard from all 8 new candidates at a closed-door forum on Monday. Now, in another attempt, a series of secret ballot votes will begin on Tuesday and continue until a nominee emerges with majority support in the Republican caucus. A full vote by the House will follow afterwards, but it is unclear if the nominee will get the 217 votes required to become the Speaker. Last week, embattled House Republicans moved to remove Jim Jordan as the party's nominee after 3 unsuccessful rounds of voting. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has filed to appear on New Hampshire's Republican primary ballot. Now, this makes Trump the first person who served as a president to file such paperwork in person more than once.
Vote for Trump and solve your problems. That's the only way. That way you can do a lot of messages.
And that's the message former President Donald Trump wrote on a commemorative poster on Monday as he filed to appear on New Hampshire's Republican primary ballot. This makes Trump the first president to file such paperwork in person more than once. While Trump had won both the 2016 and 2020 Republican primaries in New Hampshire, he lost the state in both general elections. Yet he's back again with campaigns announcing clear agendas, including a vow to stop World War III.
To every American who's terrified that Crooked Joe's weakness will cause catastrophic global conflict, excuse me, it already is. I make this promise to you as president. I will restore peace through strength, and we will stop World War III.
Donald Trump's presidential run for 2024 is marred by 91 charges in his 4 indictments, stemming from his alleged involvement in the 2020 presidential election subversion. But instead of damaging his candidacy for the Republican Party nomination, indictments have only bolstered his standing. Akriti Bhandari, reporting for DD India.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that it will keep up a military pressure on the Russian-controlled Crimea. He was addressing a video conference related to security in Prague and called Russian dominance in the Black Sea as an illusion. He claimed that the Russian fleet is no longer able to operate in the western part of the Black Sea and is gradually fleeing from Crimea.
Russian control over the Black Sea and the presence of occupiers' fleet created an illusion that Russian dominance in the Black Sea is unbeatable. Now, illusions are melting down. I simply remind you of our results. First, the Russian fleet is no longer able to operate in the western part of the Black Sea and is gradually fleeing from Crimea.
In a shocking incident, at least 22 people, including a dozen police officers, were killed in a spate of violence in central and southwestern Mexico in just one day. Unidentified assailants struck a security patrol in Guerrero, shooting dead municipal police officers. This brings the number of officers killed this year to more than 340. Authorities say an investigation is on, as Guerrero is one of Mexico's poorest states and a flashpoint of violence between drug traffickers and the police. In news from India, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh celebrated the festival of Dussehra with the troops of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police in the eastern Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. Now, 24th October is the raising day of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police. Minister Singh laid a wreath at the Tawang War Memorial and paid tributes to the brave hearts. The minister hailed the contribution of the brave soldiers in protecting the country's borders. Singh said that defense exports had crossed $2.4 billion.
दुनिया की सारी डेवलप्ड कंट्री जिस सच्चाई को स्वीकार करती हैं, विगत 8, 9, 10 वर्षों में भारत का स्टेचर, भारत का कद यह अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जगत में बढ़ा है। और मैं स्पष्ट रूप से कहना चाहता हूं, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में भारत का कद यदि अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जगत में बढ़ा है, तो जो देश में आर्थिक विकास हुआ है उसका महत्व तो है ही, लेकिन आपने यदि देश की सीमाओं को सुरक्षित न रखा होता, आपका योगदान न होता, तो मैं विश्वास के साथ कह सकता हूं कि भारत का स्टेचर जो आज बना है सारी दुनिया वालों की नजर में, यह स्टेचर, यह कद न बन पाता।
Women in Iceland, including the country's prime minister, went on a 24-hour strike on Tuesday over gender inequality. They said that the fight for equal treatment was moving far too slowly at home and abroad. Across Iceland, schools and libraries were either closed or operated on limited hours as female staff stayed home, while hospitals said that they would only handle emergency cases. The strike was called to protest against gaps in pay when compared to men and against gender-based violence, and also to highlight the unpaid work. Now take a look at some other stories making news in India. Indian Home Minister Amit Shah inspected the premises of the liquid nano diammonia phosphate plant established by IFCO in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. Minister Shah also laid the foundation stone of a sports complex in Gandhinagar. On the occasion of Dussehra, Indian Air Force Chief Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary visited the forward locations near the line of control in the Uri and Kupwara sectors in Jammu and Kashmir to meet the Indian Air Force and Indian Army troops deployed there. In an operation along the India-Sri Lanka international border, the Indian Coast Guard and Customs Department jointly arrested 4 people from Mandapam who smuggled sea cards and edible turmeric to Sri Lanka. The Indian capital, New Delhi's air quality improved marginally on Tuesday but was still in the poor category. The city's average air quality index, or AQI, stood at 220 at noon, improving from 263 on Monday. And still to come on DD India News Hour. The festival of Dussehra is being celebrated across India with great enthusiasm and fervour. Taiwan's leading presidential candidate and Vice President Lai Ching-te slams China over Foxconn probe. And the Kremlin rejects speculation about Putin's health. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. The festival of Vijayadashmi or Dussehra is being celebrated across India on Tuesday. Indian President Draupadi Murmu wished the nation on the occasion. She attended the Ram Leela at the Red Fort grounds in New Delhi. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes part in Dussehra celebrations in the national capital, New Delhi. On the occasion of Vijayadashmi or Dussehra, an Indian festival that celebrates the triumph of good over evil, Prime Minister Modi attended the Ravan Dahan on the Ram Leela grounds in the city. He also performed a puja and witnessed the burning of an effigy of Ravan. Earlier in the day, the Prime Minister extended his wishes to the nation on the auspicious occasion of Dussehra. The 5-day-long celebration of Durga Puja in Bangladesh concluded on Tuesday with the immersion of the idol of goddess Durga. Traditional Vijayadashmi procession was taken out in Dhaka and other cities of the country. Idols of goddess Durga were taken in a colorful procession for immersion in the river and other water bodies. On the way to the place of immersion, the devotees chanted the name of goddess Durga, sang praises in her honor, and blew the conch shells. Now, 78 years ago, the UN was created to maintain international peace and security among warring nations, but the complex geopolitical realities of the 21st century have reduced it to an obsolete forum of global peacekeeping and cooperation. Jessica Taneja has the details.
The Conference of the United Nations on International Organization is now convened.
October 24, 1945. A global war just ended. Some colonial powers that still controlled Asia and Africa created the United Nations to serve the interests of 193 countries.
Lasting peace.
Its permanent members, the US, Britain, France, Russia, China, or the P5, victors of a contentious world war, gave themselves the power to impose sanctions and authorize military interventions. The job was to maintain international peace. And yet, 78 years after its inception, 91 countries are still involved in some kind of conflict. War has caused a 13% loss of global GDP.
In the box next to the name printed on the ballot.
While the UN may seem faulty, geopolitical gridlocks haven't affected aid programs aimed at feeding hungry people or vaccinating children. Even the peacekeeping missions have been successful so far. Over the years, it's tried hard to become a useful and meaningful counterbalance to America's approach, only to be defeated by heightened geopolitical rivalry.
Our world is becoming unhinged. Geopolitical tensions are rising. Global challenges are mounting. And we seem incapable of coming together to respond.
Furthermore, many nations, including India, feel that UN agencies should be more democratic and representative of current realities.
It is still a few nations who shape the agenda and seek to define the norms. This cannot go on indefinitely, nor will it go unchallenged. A fair, equitable, and democratic order will surely emerge once we all put our minds to it. And for a start, that means ensuring that rule makers do not subjugate rule takers.
But the UN still battles the image of a glorified gapfest, and its systems continue to be out of date when dealing with complex geopolitical realities of the 21st century. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
On the 78th United Nations Day, India's Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar took to his social media account and said, I quote, on 78th UN Day, reaffirm India's commitment to UN and its charter, emphasize the significance of reformed multilateralism which fosters fairness, inclusivity and multipolarity. A more purposeful United Nations will deliver on the Global South's expectations and aspirations, unquote. Now take a look at some more stories making news around the world. Taiwan's leading presidential candidate and Vice President Lai Ching-te blasted China over a probe of Apple supplier Foxconn, accusing Beijing of unfairly targeting the Taiwanese company ahead of an election early next year. The Kremlin rejected speculation about President Putin's health, saying that he is fit and well. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also denied suggestions that Putin was using a body double, calling it an absurd hoax. This comes after an unsourced report claimed that Putin had suffered a serious health episode. At least 7 people were killed and 25 injured after a super fog of smoke caused multiple massive car crashes in the US. The search for victims from the chain reaction accident continued for hours after the crash. An inquiry into New Zealand's deadliest shooting opened with a memorial to the victims. It was welcomed with the traditional Maori customs and a reading from the Quran in remembrance of the 51 Muslim worshippers killed by an Australian white supremacist. And now to all the news from the world of sport. Quinton de Kock continues his sublime touch in the World Cup with his third 100 of the tournament in just 5 innings. The wicketkeeper batter smashed a brilliant 174 as South Africa piled up 382 for 5 against Bangladesh. De Kock knock saw him own the record of highest score for a designated wicketkeeper in World Cup history, going past Adam Gilchrist's 149 in the 2007 final against Sri Lanka. The left-handed batter also became the first South African batter to score 3 centuries in a single World Cup. To football now. In a Champions League encounter tonight, Bayern Munich will be looking forward to stretching its record 15-game winning run in the group stage clash against Turkish champion Galatasaray. The Bavarian club stands unbeaten in its last 36 games in the group stage, which is also a competition record. Arsenal are back in the Champions League action tonight as it will face Sevilla in an important encounter. Arsenal is currently in the second place in the Premier League standings and has been fairly impressive so far this season.
Well, that's certainly one of the reasons, obviously, his quality and the number of things that he already done in his career at his age. And then to improve the starting 11 as well, because it's a player with tremendous quality that is going to help us to be better.
That's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Ramesh Ramachandran from all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour, and once again, happy Dussehra to all those celebrating it.